Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, another weekend. So today we have some good thoughts and lines to go through because, as you all know, it's all been longer overdue since ever since this colonial era has passed and a new era has come. So some might think that it's not worth talking about, but this whole thing still affects us till now. So therefore, we must talk about it because he is that feels it. He is who feels it knows it best. So there are some things we feel today that, but some of us don't realize that this whole thing are affecting us now because of things that have been done some years back. So that is why we have to touch on this. So let me take you on a journey back. So today it's all about decolonizing the African school curriculums and the system the way it is because it affects us in everything we do. We are like living zombies or like some living experiments or guinea pigs that has been programmed to perform certain functions and therefore restrained from doing some other functions, even when those functions are needed for our own survival. So sometimes before we react or before we tend to realize that this is what we ought to have done, then it's either it becomes too late or we have just little time to operate and to achieve that aim that makes us, to want to get involved in that very engagement. So now, as you can see, that the school system in Africa has been designed by the colonial masters to favor their own let's say, their own it was a design, to favor their own programs, so to say. So because it was not designed to favor the Africans or the people that they were about to govern, it's like trying to brainwash somebody or someone to make them to believe that they are inferior to your own certain race or to your tribe, or if it's on a religious tone, then you want to colonize a set of people who knows nothing or who don't know much about, manipulation, and you're trying to manipulate them to believe in what you want them to believe in. So by so doing, when you do that to the first group or the first set of people, then that first set of people, once they are convinced, then they will be the ones that will take the job from that stage one to stage two and to the final level, and you will be the judge of all those people. So let's assume you brainwash somebody to call a spade a shovel, and that person has begun to call that shit and spade a shovel. So, and you are the teacher that he has to bring and submit, his works too. So, which means you have to give him the marks that he needs, or give him the grade that he needs to say yes, you've done well, or you've not done well, or you've done perfectly well, or you've done the average and whatsoever, and things like that. So, and you've been able to do this for like 4 years and thereabout. So, in no time, that guy will soon become a teacher, or some of them will now become a teacher in that field. Then they will start to train others as to how this thing is supposed to be done. It's just like if you remember back in the days when you was in secondary school and you go to boarding house and things like that, then you have you know uh, dinner prefect and lunch prefect and all kinds of all kinds of prefects and things like that, and you also have a dormitory prefect and things. So they teach you how to make your bed. So if you don't make it rightly, then you are punished. They teach you how to have some table manners when you're sitting on the table, how to hold your spoon, and how to hold your fork, and how to eat, or even how to chew your mouth, and things like that. So you see, these things remain with us, or remain with most of us, till you grow old. Even every time you hold a spoon, or you see a spoon, or you come in contact with a spoon, and you're about to eat on the table, you always remember that this is how you're supposed to eat in the public. So definitely, if you are eating at home, you may not be able to consider those things as, or regard them as anything. But definitely, when you are eating outside, it always occurs to you. Or when you're eating in, let's say, among some strangers and things like that. So maybe, in your workplace and your work canteen and things, then you always remember that. So that is it. You know. So so that is it. So you see, all these things are very, very important. So when you do these things, it makes you to, never goes away. So 1 minute, please. So so like I was saying, this whole thing are the things that make us who we are and reshapes who we become, whether now or in the future. So while we too, when we are growing up, then we start to pass it on to our children, and our children will also pass some of those traits as part of the tradition or culture of the family to their children as well. So that is how our life has been shaped by these colonial elements. So but what we are talking about today now, is also within the same sphere of things that Africa has found itself. So, but so far, Africa has been struggling so hard, to get itself out of this whole, out of this whole thing. It's not like Africa has not been trying. Africans has actually been trying because it just cannot imagine the trauma that Africans has been put through by these greedy Europeans and colonial elements. They never came there for any good reasons or for any good purpose. What they came there for was scavenging, the African economy as scavenging, you know, our livelihood, our resources, for their own upkeep and for their own survival. So they stole money that was more than enough for their generations and for the next generations and the other generations and generations and generations, for even another 500 years, to come, etc. So that is what they've done so far. So, but what we are saying here is that we should try and free ourselves from this whole, backwardness, that they brought us or they forced us into. So whether you call it the pit of water view and things like that, we have to get ourselves out of it. So that is what this today's broadcast is about. So decolonizing the African school curriculums involve re-evaluating and reshaping the educational system to reflect a more inclusive and authentic representation of African history, culture, and knowledge. It aims to challenge and dismantle the colonial biases and perspectives that have often dominated educational content. So these are the things. So all these whole things we have to do. So it's a lot of work. So it's not just a child's play. So it's not just a child's play. So these things we have to do them intentionally. We have to do them with everything, every fiber in our own blood. So it's all about fighting to liberate our people, liberate our minds, because most of us in this continent, you know, our educational system has been so you know so be disorganized that we find it very difficult to actually do things now. So, but most of those other countries that have been trying so far, what they've been doing so far is just doing the theory or theoretical part of everything. It's like speaking all the grammars in the world to try to tell you how things were supposed to be done and things like that, but nothing in practical that where they actually show you where you should do things in in a certain way to achieve a certain result in the practical terms. So take China for example, their school curriculums is quite different from that of Africa and stuff. Take Japanese, the Japanese school curriculum, the same thing is quite different from that of the West. So, but we always seem to, to get stuck with anything that we found ourselves in so far, and we've not been able to change anything ever since. So that is the problem that held Africa back. So that is what we are trying to discuss here, and we're trying to, to try to analyze how we are going to, begin begin to free ourselves from them or dismantle those chains that have held us bound. So but those chains are invisible chains that we don't see, but they exist. You understand? They exist. So like like they say that said, there's no chains on my feet, but I'm not free. So that is what it is. So those chains are invisible chains. So they restrict and they head us back. So we have to dismantle those chains in order for us to set ourselves free educationally and what our knowledge wise. So that is what it's about. So so the aim is to challenge and dismantle the colonial biases and perspectives that have often dominated educational content. So here are some steps that can be taken to begin the process of decolonizing the African school curriculum. Acknowledge the colonial legacy. First thing, you know, to be able to solve a problem, first you have to acknowledge that the problem exists, right? So when you acknowledge a problem, then you'll be able to at least, you know, move forward to try to see how you can deal with the problem. Do you understand what I mean? So first acknowledge the problem, which is the colonial legacy have to be acknowledged first and foremost. Recognize the historical context and the impact of colonialism on education in Africa. So understand how colonial powers shaped the curriculum to serve their own selfish interest and purpose. They use this thing to marginalize, you know, the indigenous knowledge. Those knowledge, they took them, of course, and they put them somewhere, hid them within their own destiny, and or they perfected on them, to suit their own, their own purpose, which they definitely, turn out to use in some other, some other things, some, in some other times and climes, you know. So it's not like they just met some dumb people running a whole continent and stuff like that. No, they met the Africans running their own affairs peacefully or whatever and things like that, you know. So they were so organized in their own little ways or in their own bigger ways and things to the extent that an African was able or so African group or tribes were able to even as at that time, you know, conquer Spain. If you still remember, the Moron people or what they call them. They conquered Spain all the way from Morocco and stuff like that. So they were the ones who were occupying the Morocco of today, you know, the North Africa of today, and straight to Southern Europe. They conquered Spain and Portugal, and all the rest. So they were the ones that did that. They were Africans, of course. So they occupied those places for over 500 years, and nothing happened. So they led. So, but the thing is that mode of concrete then and the mode of concrete later, later changes anyway. So, but that one should be for another this thing, how the Europeans, you know, or the Romans, you know, came about reclaiming some part of Europe and things like that for themselves. So, but now what I'm just trying to say is just to make you understand that an African man, Mara Musa, uh, was uh, was acclaimed to be the richest man in the world sometimes. You know, the man that traveled with all kinds of goods and things like that. So that just to tell you that, you know, it's not like the Africans were just so barbaric the way the European wants you to not think. So that's that. So, but now Europeans were able to come into Africa with so many instruments, to destabilize, and to, you know, to disorganize, the society that they met, that the Africans were living. So the educational system, everything that the Africans once had was prospering. Africa have the first university, in the world, etc. We all know that. So all these ones is these are stories for, for another day. So what I'm here to say is that we're talking about how to decolonize, you know, the African the curriculum, the colonial curriculum, and then the system that they try to entrench, on us. So most of those systems has been inherited by our people, and yet that system has been made to stay on for the past 50 years, even after the colonial and so-called independence, from the colonial masters. So now that we've already realized what the colonial legacy was and what their intentions was, then from there on we should know how to dismantle this whole thing and move on with our lives. So that's what it's about. So it said involve, it said understand how colonial powers shape the curriculum to serve their own interests and marginalize indigenous knowledge. Involve diverse stakeholders, include the input of educators, students, parents, community leaders, and subject matter experts in the curriculum development process. Right? So it is essential to incorporate diverse perspectives and ensure the curriculum meets the needs and aspirations of the local community which you know they stand to serve. So which means educational curriculum have to be shaped to reflect the area in which it has to be taught. It has to reflect on the culture of that environment. It has to reflect on on the way of life of these people. For example, if for example, let's say, because I know in some cultures in Africa, for example, people goes to they have 5 active days, you know, 5 active days of engagement. Then the other 2 days is always for rest, or if not more than that, for example. So those even in every market days, sometimes most market days also the major market days are also 5 days, etc. So which means 5 days are the African weekly on African weekly calendar. It's always within 5 days, unlike the 7 days that you now have. So, but let's say that 5 active days, for example, now you know that in a certain society or in a certain culture or environment that they practice that active days, or let's say 3 active days. Out of that three, let's assume that one is a resting day and the other one is a market day. Do you understand the point now? Because when you mean active days, in the African context or in some of the African context, you know, because I remember back in the days, in my in my village there are days for to go to farm. So farm was one of the active, the active, let's say, active engagement that the majority of the people were actually involved in. Apart from the students or the children do go to school. So, but the adults, the adults, the generality of the adults or majority of the adults have to go to the farm, especially the male adults, except some males, who happens to do businesses like in the market that do sales or whatever. But most of these people also, even when they were having those kind of engagement in market, they also chose a special day to go to the farm without going to the market, knowing fully well that on the fifth day or on the fourth day is the big or the biggest market day. So that is the day they will set aside to go to the market. So which means maybe they go to farm like twice or three times a week, and they go to the market once a week, and they and they take one resting day out of the whole week, to rest. So if you go to a place like that, then you have to make sure that in order for you to, for example, to encourage people to go to come to school, or to encourage the parents to allow their children to come to school, you have to take these things into cognizance, right? So that they will be able to say, okay, yes, and that day we don't do much. Okay, then they can come to that place and see. So anyway, so this was how this whole thing were designed. So, and this is how we still have to design this whole thing also. So it's not like that people have to go to the mosque on Friday, for example, you know, within a certain given time, and you start to, you know, choose or put these programs, you know, or try to squeeze this program into that time frame that the people have to go to the farm. Definitely, they will not take you serious, you know. Then they will definitely go to the mosque, which they are very cognizant with. They are used to that, all of their lives. The same thing is like you carrying or putting this thing to be on a Sunday, knowing fully well that that area, is highly populated by Christians. Then you expect them to forgo their church or their services to come to your school. That will not also happen. So these were the things that they did. They did all these things to disorganize our people, our folks, and things like that. So now, for us to reorganize and for us to decolonize this whole system, etc., we have to take all these things into consideration as well. You understand? So, which means they have to be new. In fact, everything have to be drawn, review and revise existing curriculum, assess the current curriculum to identify areas where colonial biases exist, you know. So which means even the dictionaries have to be rewritten sometimes, at least our own dictionary. They have their own dictionary, so why can't we have our own dictionary? So if for example in the dictionary of the white people they said anything black is is bad, for example, so you too you can have your own dictionary. If you want to say everything bad is white or everything white is bad, that is your own this thing. So that is how it has been. So everybody is doing their own thing. So the Japanese have their own whatever thing that they believe in. So if they said being black means that being black is being strong, or being black is being inferior, so that is their own problem. So if you also say be Japanese or Japanese means whatever thing negative or in the negative, or Chinese mean these things in negative in your own culture, so be it. You understand? So it's just a mere context. So you write these things, you put these things on, you know, somewhere in the context, and you start to propagate it. In no time, in 20, 50 years down the line, a child will pick up that book because he'll be taught along that line. Then you see things the way they are in that book, and especially when their parents taught them that. You say, "Oh, yes, our parents taught us that, and the other one's parents taught him that, or the other one parent taught her that, etc." So when they are talking, then they'll be in unison with what they were taught right from primary schools. So this was how these colonial masters came. So this is how we too we are going to, you know, go back, to decolonize this whole thing and try to check out where they were biased against us. We have to analyze all these contents, all these content, textbooks, and teaching materials to identify, you know, Eurocentric, those Eurocentric, I call them Eurocentric now, but some people call them racist, kind of perspective and stereotypes, and omissions of African history, culture, and achievements, which they never try to highlight. So it's our business to highlight, our culture and our history and our achievements, so because they done what they did, for their own benefit, so that, they also use that thing also to raise their ego, to make them feel kind of superior, kind of, so that is it. So now, some might say, okay, why why blame the Europeans for what they did and stuff like that. So, but this is no time for blame. This is time to decolonize. You know that seed that they planted, that seed of hate. So, but now the problem is that our people are now the ones propagating the same hate that these people has created, for them and for their own people to I mean, to make us feel susceptible to whatever thing that they threw at us. So it's just like you now seeing some people bringing out all kinds of books and things like that, and saying all kinds of bullshit about the black race. So with the black race now pick that same book and start to say the same thing that are not true about themselves. So that would be you destroying your own self and not blaming the person that write that book, because that book was not written for you. So it was written for somebody else, also for some other groups. So that is what it's about. So we have to integrate the African history and perspective, include comprehensive and accurate accounts of the African history, civilizations, contributions, and struggles, highlight the diverse cultures, languages, traditions, and knowledge system across the continent, incorporate narratives from pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial eras, right? So emphasize indigenous knowledge, recognize and value indigenous knowledge system, including traditional practices, oral traditions, and local wisdom. Incorporate them into the curriculum to give students a broader understanding of their own heritage and environment, right? So these are the things that will boost their own self-esteem, you know, and make them feel really powerful and make them feel really valuable, and things like that. So it's not all about trying to promote the Eurocentric or the racist idea in which they brought into Africa in order to make them to succeed, you know, and in the project that brought them there in the first place, So that is it. So as far as they are concerned, they saw Africa as a business. They came in there to do business. And that business was what they were there for, because they came there to do business, generally trading at first. Then later they saw the weakness and the weakness of Africa. Then they went to Berlin, sat down together on a round table, and they started to share Africa with a knife, with a ruler and knife, and start drawing it from here to there. France, you here, you take there. Germans, you take here, and then Portugal, you take here, etc. Spain, you take there. Just imagine, while Africans were sleeping in their own continent, doing their own thing, they've already decided that these people have everything that we need. These people are primitive. We are going there to kill as many as possible. Nobody should ask questions about this whole thing that we're going there to do. So forget about that. These people are not humans, so we'll not put them under this so-called human rights chapter and stuff like that. So they put them under another special chapter, you know. So, and our people were made to be butchered without any questions asked. So everybody was benefiting from it. The Americans were benefiting from it. So the Europeans were benefiting from it. So nobody was asking questions. Why the Africans were not speaking up for themselves, or did not stood up for themselves, and what have you. The same thing happened. Then they went into the Middle East and they did the same thing. So you just imagine. So these people are very heartless. So, but because of their survival, definitely they did not care about any other thing. So if we get to that, find ourselves in that kind of situation also, so we should try and free ourselves by every means necessary. So because all die or not die, it doesn't really matter whether you die. No one die twice. You understand? So if you really want the next generation and the next generations, to have a good life, or at least a balance out to have some free air, to breathe some free air without this European colonialism and chains of retrogressions tied around their waist and their necks, then something you have to give right now. So you don't have to be going to the UN and all kinds of meetings and be begging for debt forgiveness and things like that. Definitely, there must be some other ways to do that. You know, just free ourselves from the debt overnight and just say we are not paying anymore because we already paid all the debt long ago. So every other thing that we're paying since now interest. Even the interest we don't even understand because the people you sign this contracts with are some dictators and what have you and things like that. So it's not like these people were even elected by the people and stuff like that, or that even the loans that they took even pass through the right channels. So why should the European country even be giving loans to some African countries without actually, without actually, using that loan to pass through the normal channels? And yet, 20, 30 years later, you're asking the generations that were not born before then to be paying some interest in that same loan that they don't even know anything about. So to me, it doesn't really make sense. So it's time that, it's high time that Africans should wake up from their slumber, and take their future, into their hands and do something very, 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 drastic, for things to change. So that is it. So these are the things we are talking about. So to promote critical thinking and analysis, encourage students to question dominant narratives and develop critical thinking skills. Teach them to critically analyze information, challenge stereotypes, and develop their own informed perspectives. So use inclusive and representative learning materials. Ensure that textbooks, reading materials, and multimedia resources reflect diversity and, and inclusivity. Include literature, arts, and media from African authors, artists, and creators. Encourage the use of local languages alongside alongside colonial languages. Foster foster cultural exchange and dialogue. Promote cultural exchange. Promote cultural exchange. That's cultural exchange program, workshops, and events that facilitate interactions between different communities, languages, cultures, or cultures. This helps to broaden perspectives and foster mutual understanding. Invest in teacher trainings and professional development. They provide teachers with training and resources to enable them to deliver a decolonized curriculum effectively. So we have a lot of work to do. So to foster cultural exchange and dialogue, to promote cultural exchange programs. So that cultural exchange program, I think, is very, very important because, as you see, in Africa, we have a lot of culture, a lot of languages, and etc. And a whole lot of things have to be done. So just imagine if we have those kind of cultural exchange programs, even within the country like Nigeria, for example, have cultural exchange programs. Then you see a lot of things will change. The people will understand this much more better than it is right now, because Nigeria as a country, first of all, should be like a country of maybe about 10 nations, or if not more than that. But it be fused to be into a country. You'll be surprised that the man from Delta State, the Delta State, which is supposed to be a state, the man from, let's say, uh, Bendelibo, like Asaba, Dukwa, whatever, cannot be able to speak a language that is spoken like, let's say, 5, 10 kilometers away. They can't even understand one or two words from those languages. They can't speak Isoko, for example. You know, they can't speak Shekiri, for example. And the Shekiri, the same thing, cannot speak what they speak in Dokwa. But yet, it's supposed to be one single state. So, so when you look at that, then you look at the country as a whole, Nigeria as a whole, then that one is another matter entirely, because what is spoken in the east sometimes cannot even be spoken in the west, or neither is it understood by those in the west, or neither is what is spoken in the south being understood by what is spoken in the east or in the west as well. I'm talking of the southern part first of all now. So the same thing, even in the west, they also speak, maybe they have another 2, 3 languages, you know, or within them there, or even 4 or more, or less, and yet they don't understand themselves. So, but if all these things are intentionally put into the curriculums, etc., and this thing are being taught at school, definitely, then the upcoming generations will be able to understand themselves even better. Because sometimes I always used to wonder, how do they actually trade back then in the market, in those local markets and things like that? How were they able to understand themselves? So, but somehow they were able to do that, because back in the days, my grandmom used to speak about 3 languages or 4, you know, back in the days. I don't know how she learned it, but that was just the truth. My mother also the same thing. She was able to speak at least 3 languages, you know. So now I can imagine. But when it comes to the other generation, our generations that follow, then it becomes a very big problem, because what we're taught at school is to speak English, to speak the English language. So even when you speak the broken English, then which is widely spoken all over the place, then you are seen as being inferior somehow, in some clique. So therefore, everybody was trying hard, to learn how to speak, good English and grammatical and things like that. So, but in no time, some people even forgot their own local languages and dialects, during this whole process. Especially when they live in the city where their languages are not spoken. So these are the things. So, but what we are saying is that we have to decolonize that mindset and try to, take our originality, and build upon what we already have for thousands of years, etc. Like our languages, our cultures, our traditions, and so many things like that. These things can be refined. I know when I say tradition, a lot of people say, "Oh, forget about that, this thing." No, it's not like that. Without your culture and tradition, you are nobody. You are nothing. We cannot keep copying the West, you know, because the West lack those same things. You don't have their own tradition. Or their own tradition is quite it's unlike us, right? So, but that is their tradition anyway. So, but it's like someone like us. So when we see that kind of in their tradition and teachings, we kind of, you know, get carried by either get irritated by it by saying, what kind of rubbish is this and stuff like that. So, but some of our people now, when they travel abroad or they travel out, that's the first thing they try to do. They try to adapt those same disgusting, you know, things that they call, Western tradition, which is actually some of them are not a bit of, you know, a bit of, tick tack from here and there, put together, because in the West sometimes they are being influenced also by the immigrants who are coming in with their own cultures and lifestyles and things like that. So it depends on where you live. So if you live in a very big city and stuff like that, so definitely those people who are from originally from that place, they get influenced by those little things that they see, you know, by those foreigners who are living there because they were born there. So maybe if you live in some villages, things like that will not be happening there, or will not be, you know, will be strange as well when they see something like that. Then you look at you, it's very strange. Like, who the hell is this, and where is it coming from? What kind of, you know? So that's why sometimes when they see you in those kind of area, the first thing they want to ask is, where are you coming? Where are you from? So you'll be surprised that they're asking you that because they want to know if you all behave like that, if you all act like that, or if you are different from the kind of people that they be seeing around and stuff like that. So that is how this whole thing is. So now what we are saying is that we have to retrain our teachers, etc. With the resources that we enable them to deliver and decolonize our curriculum effectively. So we have to equip them, with the knowledge and skills to challenge biases, right? So facilitate inclusive discussions and incorporate diverse perspectives in their teachings. So all these things are very, very vital to our own, to our own survival. So we have to evaluate and monitor progress. You see, we have to regularly assess the impact and effectiveness of the decolonization efforts. We have to collect feedbacks from our students, teachers, community leaders, or communities, dwellers, to make necessary adjustment and improvement, in order for us to get that result, which we are fighting towards or hoping towards to achieve, you know. So, so said decolonizing the African school system or the African school curriculum is an ongoing process that requires sustained commitment, collaborations, and engagement from all stakeholders. So the aim is to empower students to restore cultural pride, and provide a more accurate and inclusive education that reflects the diversity and richness of the African heritage, right? So these are the things that we must do. So no one else can do it for us. So everybody may have their own opinion on this, and some might want to say that maybe maybe we've not done enough in this regard. So, but I sometimes I see some other these things talking about this whole thing, from all over Africa. I've seen in some symposiums, you see some, what do you call them, some teachers and all kinds of educational system from the Ministry of Educations, all the way from East Africa to West Africa, Southern Africa, etc. They be doing all these symposiums every now and then, and you start to wonder that why all these stuffs are going on, over the years, nothing practical has actually been done, to augment, for the deficiencies, of the system, So, but I think it's high time, it's high time that people actually do something because too much, too much of this ranting and talking and without any actual improvement on how the system, supposed to be reshaped, to benefit the actual people that need the help the most. So that is it. So for now, we say I hope that this thing is an eye opener because our people we talk too much sometimes. You know, we keep talking and talking and talking, and yet nothing is being done. So nothing is being done. So, but even those who knows what the author have done are not doing anything. They rather talk and talk and talk. So, and sometimes when you speak too much, then they say, "My brother, keep quiet. You're speaking too much grammar and stuff like that." Because those who knows how to do things like this, they are educated in this area. You know, to them, it's just like cut and paste. They can just get things done in no time. Then from there, they start to refine. All they have to do, they cut, they paste, they delete, they remove some stuff, then fusing some things that they think that we actually need now. So that is how they will do it in no time. Then when this thing continue to be refined, then in no time we get to that stage whereby we say yes, I think this thing has been Africanized up to a certain extent. Therefore, let's move on to another phase. So because nothing is perfect, but if you look very well right now, what some people were doing in Nigeria, for example, when some certain regimes came around, what they were doing was actually removing the African history, the Nigerian history out of the school curriculum. Then you wonder what their intentions was. And those people who were doing that were people who migrated into the country and were given space because they want their own colonial path or their own pathway, to be covered. Then they were trying to manipulate that. How can you manipulate that? Why we are still alive? I read history when I was in school. A lot of other people read history when they were in school. So now they are going to Google and all kinds of things and trying to piece all kinds of fake history there and stuff like that. Then you start to wonder what the hell is going on here. So how long will that continue? Because at the end of the day, we know the truth, they know the truth, and everyone else knows the truth. So they just think that because they have power within the space of 4 years or within the space of 8 years, then they want to turn everything upside down. Then they are withdrawing all the whole textbook from school, stopping history from school, etc. Then trying to teach people their own history. That is kind of another kind of colonialism, another kind of brainwash. But that is stupidity of the highest order. Stupidity of the highest order, I would say. So by they trying to cover that. So they know who I'm talking about. They know themselves. So you trying to cover all those kind of this thing or trying to see if you can cover it, I mean, just makes you even look much more stupid than you actually was. So but then that one, should be thrown into the dustbin in the meantime because they know where they are from, we know where they are from, we know where we are from. Who owns Papa's land. So Papa's land will remain Papa's land. So definitely those who are try to scramble for what they don't actually have, they can never get it because it's not theirs. So that is it. So you can imagine that if a black man like you and I can be doing that now, when the first colonial masters have gone, then they want to turn themselves into the second colonial this thing in this era and time. Is that possible? No. That is only possible when the people sleeps, or when people keep quiet, or when the people remain mute and stupid. So, but not at this time. So they've done all they could, done everything that they could. They did not succeed, and they can never succeed in that. So that school curriculum, that history have to be brought back to school. The African history in general also have to be brought back to school. So don't try to balkanize the Nigerian school system or the Nigerian school curriculum, especially by removing the history and culture, because the history and cultures are part of the new school curriculum, you know, that we we shape the future. Because first of all, that self-esteem is highly needed in everything you do. Without high self-esteem, then you are nothing. So if you are boring cultures and stuff like that, then you are boring education and educational materials and stuff like that. Definitely at a point in time, then you will lose track of where you're supposed to be, or where you ought to be, or what you ought to have done, and how you're supposed to have done it. If not, you become a slave to that same person who has designed that same curriculum, because you always go back to that master to ask, is this correct or is this not correct? So even if it's correct and he said no, it's almost correct, then he give you another twist again. to reanalyze that same thing again and tell you this is how it's supposed to be. Or actually, what I wrote was that, you know, was that. But actually, what it meant was not that, which means literally, it was supposed to be this and this and this and this and that. So definitely, if you start to dwell on things like that, definitely you never finish learning as far as that school is concerned, because that thing was given to you by design, right? You will continue always to go back to that your dictionary, or which is that person that you feel, is they are the original people that knows about things like that, because these things are not put in their own special what have you and things. So that is what we are talking about here. So we have to have our own things. We have to be original in everything that we do. We have to acknowledge, you know, what their intentions was that made them to came and that brought them to Africa in the first place, and what they were there to do, what they were there to gain. So and why they were able to design those stuff, you know, that they did not design this thing to make us better than them or to make us knowledgeable than them. No, they only make us. They design these things to make us to understand, how to follow rules. Yes, how to follow their rules, their laid down rules, so that when they say stop, you are making the job easier for them. So that when they say stop, then you know when to stop. When they say move, then you know where to move. Or like speaking to a cow, you know. So that was exactly what they did. So even their educational system also was also designed, you know, like this, so that you know when they ask you to jump, and when they ask you to stop, and when they ask you to eat, and when they ask you to do whatever things that they're asking you to do. So this was their own design. So don't blame them for designing this thing. But I will blame you now for using that same design now to try to decolonize. I mean to try to, you know, colonize the mind of our people. So therefore, the only thing we can do now is to decolonize. Right? We have to decolonize our minds, our mindset. Everything that we do, we have to decolonize it. Act like an African. Act like a Niger. Act like the man that you are. You know, like you are supposed to act. As supposed to be in your culture, within your culture, and within your own tradition and stuff like that. Don't say because you are from a certain tradition, then definitely your tradition is no more in vogue. Then you are trying to copy another tradition. No, that would not be you. Be yourself. It doesn't matter where you are. Be yourself. Stick to your tradition. If there's anything that you think is evil about your tradition, that is not good about tradition, I'm not asking you to hold on to that, but there are ways you can you know, refine those things, and as well still adhere to the principle, that kept your tradition alive for thousands of years. So don't be the one to destroy it now because you feel you are not smarter than everybody else. That's not true. That's not true at all. So stick to the principle. That principle is the main thing. Those are the foundations, that has held you bound, whether in progress or in prosperity and what have you and things like that. So some might say, oh, because they are from a certain village, there's no prosperity in their village and stuff like that. How? What do you mean? There are doctors from that same village. There are lawyers. There are engineers from that same village. There are pastors. There are imams. There are afars, etc. Religious leaders and what have you for that same village. Whether some will say because okay they left the village before they become prosperous and whatever. What else were you thinking? Do you have an engineering firm in your village? So how were they supposed to become engineers in the village? Or do you have a university in your village? Of course, they have to go to university somewhere, out of their villages, for them to have or acquire that knowledge. Even some of you don't even have a primary school in your villages. So, but yet, it doesn't stop you from getting a primary school education. So this should not be it, because if you know what I mean, like this reminds me of the woman that was killed in, I think, was it Cross River State? Yes, just recently. So they called her a witch, and then she was killed. They burned her to ash, etc. and stuff like that. So I wouldn't want to bring that picture here, but it's so painful, to sometimes read things like that, because you can just imagine at this time and time and time and space, then you say things like that still happening in a country like Nigeria, then you start to wonder sometimes, you know. So I'm not saying that things like that doesn't exist, but you'd be surprised that these people who are being accused of being witches or wizards, you know, that that was killed just like that. You'd be surprised that she's not even anything like that, you know. So, but you can also ask these people now, how do you know? How did you know that this person was a witch? And they will say because something happened or somebody dreamt and then one thing happened and the other thing and what have you and stuff. So a lot of people, with all kinds of superstitious beliefs and things, they believe in what they believed. So, but what I'm trying to say is that if you think because you are from a village that your village is not making progress, therefore the village is is your problem, then you have a problem, because from that same village, like I said before, you have a lot of people who are prosper or who are still prospering. So why blaming the village? Some people will say, okay, somebody. In fact, you should know what I'm talking about. So that was how they killed that woman, just like that. So the woman he just killed her. That was really barbaric, you know, very barbaric. So I'm just trying to say that the system is so barbaric that sometimes we don't face the main thing that we're supposed to face or fight, the main battle that we're supposed to to fight. Instead, we start dwelling on some other stuff, that are not important to us. So decolonizing the mindset also affects everything or everything else. So so that is what we are here to talk about today. So I said normally integrating the African history and perspectives, which includes the comprehensive and accurate account of African history and civilizations and contributions and struggles. It highlights the diverse cultures, languages, traditions, and knowledge system across the continent. It incorporates, narrates from pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial eras. So all this whole thing has to be what? Analyzed, emphasized, the indigenous knowledge, recognize and value indigenous knowledge system, including traditional practices, oral traditions, etc. So that is it. So I say recognize and value indigenous knowledge system, including traditional practices, oral traditions, and local wisdom. We have to incorporate all these things together into the curriculum to give students a broader understanding of their own heritage and environment. So all these things will make us who we are. So imagine if this thing has been done 50 years ago or 60 years ago, by now, which means we will have benefits from those structures and things like that, then we'll have taken it to another level. We will have been the teachers now, then teaching others. So they will have taught our children also, then our children will have taken it to another level again. So before you know it, then it's refined. and everything is just, so that's acceptable the way it's supposed to be. So that is it, my people. So we have to really look inward within ourselves and see what we can really do to improve things. So let's just go through some newspapers today. Say verdict: 1 month in office, Nigerians divided on Tinubu's performance. Then another one said, confession: oil subsidy. Buhari never wanted Tinubu to win coalitions of northern groups. Says so, not me. So that is what. We have some other stuff here on Nigeria. These things and newspapers. So a lot of people are, or some of these politicians are now playing tough and talking tough because they said they are the ones that have whatever this thing. So let me just go through that the confession of oil subsidy. He said the confession on oil subsidy and Buhari never wanted Tinubu to win. So if it's true, they just want you to believe that. But if it's true that he never wanted to do that and wanted Tinubu to win, definitely there are so many things he would have done. He would have allowed a free and fair election to take place. So but he actually played a role in all of this mismanagement of the electoral bias, our conduct. So nobody should try to, maybe because they are now saying that maybe Buhari or maybe Tinubu might not be the minority that seat. That's why these people are not coming out, because these people are always bootlickers. Sometimes they always come out to make some bogus statement without actually, you know, without actually coming out with any proof. You see, in his stunning admission on Monday, former Nigerian President Buhari revealed that the withdrawal of oil subsidy was not motivated by the country's economic interest, but rather as a political move to benefit the APC and his then presidential candidate, leader Bola Tinubu, in the February 25th general election. Say this revelation, which came through a press statement by former presidential media aide Mala Garba Shehu, has ignited a firestorm of criticism, raising broader questions about how national interests were prioritized throughout Buhari's tenure and shedding light on a range of pressing issues that plague Nigeria during his time in office. So you see, that's how they talk. They just talk and talk and talk. These are people who never actually, were not voted by the people, to have some particular offices, but they were just assigned, you know, by the then Buhari and stuff like that, who was a president then. So everybody knows that all this whole thing is just hula baloo and stuff. So that's it. But I don't want to go into that much than that because it's not about wasting my time. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, if you are coming to Niger Matters for the first time, please try to subscribe. Try to subscribe, you know, on our channel so that we will be given that 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 motivation and that we actually need to to make things happen. So we'll be trying to improve on this channel in so many ways. So, but still, we're still hoping that we can still do better than that, and we want our videos also to be shared by all. Please share as much as you can, and let every video of us, goes, go straight to every homes, so that we'll be able to, at least, because the more you share these videos, then the more YouTube, we will be able to recommend these videos for others to see. So it's very important that you share this video, please, and let it go around, let it go viral. Now, please don't forget to give us, a token of your thumbs up. So it's very important. So if also you can actually drop, some comments on our comment section, that will also be appreciated. So thank you very much, and God bless you. I hope to see you soon with more better news.